right, let's dive in. Today, we're exploring a really intriguing concept. The idea that we create our own reality.
Oh, yeah, this should be interesting.
We'll be looking at a YouTube video by Toxic Man. He's a creator who really delves into metaphysics and spirituality.
Okay, so we're getting into some deep stuff.
Yeah, it might sound a little out there to some people, but I think it's worth exploring. I mean, even physicists are starting to consider some of these ideas, especially in quantum mechanics.
Right, like how observation can affect reality at the subatomic level. That's pretty wild when you think about it.
Exactly. So let's see what Toxic Man has to say. He starts by describing his morning routine where he intentionally visualizes his day going really well.
Like a manifestation practice.
Yeah, exactly. And he actually claims that unexpectedly good things happen as a result of this practice.
Well, that sounds a lot like the power of positive thinking, right? Or maybe even the placebo effect.
It could be, but then wouldn't that mean we're just shaping our perception of reality and not reality itself?
That's a great question. It is tricky. Toxic Man seems to be suggesting something a bit more profound, though.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more.
He actually uses his own experience as a deaf person to illustrate his point.
Oh, that's interesting.
He talks about how deaf people are often perceived as needing help or being limited in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's a common societal perception.
But Toxic Man says he rejected that whole narrative. He chose to have a happy childhood.
So he consciously chose to defy those expectations.
Exactly. And he attributes this to his ability to, in his words, create his own reality.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It really highlights the power of our internal narratives, the stories we tell ourselves, and the choices we make in how we frame our experiences.
It's like choosing to focus on the positive rather than letting those negative perceptions define you.
Exactly. Toxic Man goes on to say that we're all observers of our own reality. Our consciousness shapes what we experience.
I mean, that makes sense, right? We all have our own subjective experiences.
It's more than just having different opinions, though. He's suggesting our individual consciousness actually plays a role in shaping the reality we experience.
Okay, so how does that work on a practical level? If we're all creating our own realities, what happens when those realities clash? Like, what if two people want completely different outcomes?
That's where things get really interesting. He uses this example of two football teams, both wanting to win the Super Bowl, but only one can actually win.
So whose reality wins out in that situation? Is it like a winner-takes-all kind of thing?
It's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of the debate about collective consciousness. Like, are we all influencing a shared reality somehow? Or is it just this chaotic mix of individual realities bouncing off each other?
This is making my head spin a little bit.
I know, it's a lot to wrap your mind around. And it leads to another big question. If we are creating our reality, what part of us is actually doing the creating?
Right, who's the architect of all this?
Toxic Man believes it's not our ego, but a deeper aspect of ourselves. He calls it a GUI.
A GUI, like a computer interface.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange analogy, but it's interesting. He's basically saying this GUI holds the blueprint for our reality, and it's accessible through non-ordinary states of consciousness.
Okay, so we're talking about meditation, altered states, that kind of thing.
Exactly. He suggests that our everyday ego-driven awareness isn't where the real creative power lies. There's something deeper at play.
I'm really starting to get into the weeds here.
I know. This is some deep metaphysical territory. But that's what makes it so fascinating, right? It challenges us to think beyond our usual limitations and consider what might be possible.
I'm definitely feeling challenged.
Me too. But I'm also really curious to explore this further. Toxic Man makes another point that I think is worth highlighting. He acknowledges that reaching this non-ordinary state, tapping into that GUI, takes effort. It's not just a matter of wishing something into existence.
So there are no shortcuts to creating the reality you want.
Apparently not. He emphasizes that humans are inherently creative beings, but it's as if we've forgotten how to access that deeper level of creation.
So maybe engaging in creative activities like painting, writing, music could be a way to start tapping back into that creative power.
It's an intriguing possibility, and here's where Toxic Man brings in a bit of science to support his claims. He points to quantum physics, specifically how observation can affect reality at the subatomic level.
Quantum physics, now we're talking.
It is a fascinating connection, but it's important to note that interpretations of quantum physics vary widely.
So we should be careful about drawing a direct line between quantum physics and the idea that we create our own reality, right?
Exactly. It's an interesting parallel, but not a definitive proof. Still, it does raise some thought-provoking questions about the nature of reality and the role of consciousness in shaping that reality.
Okay, I'm going to need a minute to digest all of this.
Me too. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've touched on the power of positive thinking, the influence of our perceptions, this concept of a deeper creative self, and even dipped our toes into the world of quantum physics.
And we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, especially when it comes to the practical implications of these ideas. Like, how do we actually apply this to our everyday lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we'll delve into further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm back, and I gotta say, that first part really got me thinking.
Me too. It's like opening up a whole new can of worms, right?
So how do we even begin to connect these really complex ideas about consciousness and reality to, like, our everyday lives?
Well, one way to think about it is to look at the role of mindset and belief, you know?
Right, like how our thoughts can influence our experiences.
We see this all the time, even outside of metaphysics. Think about, like, an athlete who visualizes winning a competition, or an entrepreneur who stays optimistic even when things get tough.
Yeah, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
It's a fascinating phenomenon for sure. It suggests that our internal state, our beliefs, our expectations can actually have an impact on our reality. Even in simple interactions, like think about a social situation. How you approach it, whether you're confident or feeling doubtful, can make a huge
Oh,
difference.
absolutely. Like if you walk into a room thinking everyone's judging you, you're probably going to have a very different experience than if you walk in feeling confident and open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your internal reality kind of sets the stage for how others perceive you and how those interactions unfold.
Okay, so that makes sense for things we can kind of control, right? But what about those times when life just throws us a curveball, like unexpected events that we definitely didn't create with our thoughts?
Right. That's the part I struggle with too. Like accidents, illnesses, those things just happen. It's not like we're consciously manifesting those. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, it's like we can't control everything that happens to us, right? So does that mean we're actually powerless in the face of external circumstances?
I don't think so. The idea isn't that we can micromanage every single detail of our lives. I think it's more about recognizing the power we have to choose our responses, even when faced with really challenging circumstances.
Okay, so it's not about preventing negative things from happening, but about how we choose to interpret them and how we allow them to affect us.
Precisely. Our response, our attitude, has this ripple effect. It can influence our future experiences. It's about acknowledging that we have agency. We can choose our path, even when it's rough going.
It reminds me of what Toxic Man said about like effort and intention. Creating your reality isn't just wishful thinking, right?
Absolutely not. He's very clear about that. It's about being deliberate with the thoughts you focus on, the stories you tell yourself, and the actions you take. It's about cultivating a mindset that aligns with the reality you want to experience.
Okay, so it's a combination of awareness, intention, and action. I could see that. But like practically speaking, if someone wants to make a change in their life, where do they even begin?
Well, the first step is always clarity, right? Like, what is it you actually want to create? Define your ideal reality. Make it specific.
So like a vision board, but for your entire life.
Kind of. But the key here is to then examine your current beliefs and thoughts. Are they actually aligned with that vision? If you're constantly thinking negative thoughts or doubting yourself, you're kind of undermining your own efforts.
It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
Exactly. So you need to shift those limiting beliefs and replace them with more empowering ones. And that's not always easy. Our thoughts have a way of like running on autopilot.
Yeah, they definitely do. I know I get stuck in those negative thought loops sometimes. So how do we break free from that?
It takes practice. But remember, Toxic Man suggested that creative activities might help us access that deeper creative self, that GY he was talking about.
Oh, right. So maybe doing things like painting, writing, even just brainstorming ideas can help us strengthen that connection.
It's a great way to think about it, like you're flexing those creative muscles. But you also have to consider the influence of our external environment.
Right, like if you're surrounded by negative people, how can you possibly create a positive reality for yourself? It seems impossible.
That's a real challenge, for sure. We can't control other people, but we can control our exposure to negativity.
So it's about setting boundaries and being mindful of the influences we allow into our lives.
Exactly. Choosing to prioritize your own inner peace and seeking out positive influences.
Okay, so this whole idea of creating our reality, it's not just about our thoughts, it's about our actions, our environment, and the choices we make, right? It's like a whole lifestyle shift.
It really is. It's about recognizing that you're not just passively going through life, you have a choice in how you respond to everything.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's about recognizing our own power to choose our thoughts, beliefs, actions, and environment.
And that brings us back to the core of this whole discussion. It's about acknowledging that we are not just passive recipients of whatever life throws our way. We have the power to shape our experiences, to influence our reality, even if it's just one thought, one action, one choice at a time.
It's almost like we're co-creators of our reality, working in conjunction with, the circumstances of our lives.
I like that. It's a really good way to put it. It captures the sense of agency we have while also acknowledging the limitations of our control.
It's a delicate balance, for sure. Like embracing our power to create, but also accepting that we can't control every single aspect of our lives.
Exactly. And in a way, that acceptance, that surrendering of control can actually be really liberating.
How so?
Well, it allows us to focus our energy on what we can influence, our thoughts, beliefs, and choices.
This has been a really mind-bending conversation, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
Me too. I think that's what's so exciting about exploring these concepts, right? It opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It makes us question our assumptions and consider how interconnected everything really is.
Definitely a lot to process.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts so far? What's standing out to you? Okay, so we've talked about applying this create your own reality thing to our lives. But before we wrap up this whole deep dive, I think there are some even bigger questions to consider.
Oh, absolutely. Like we've been focusing on the individual, right? But this opens up all these questions about shared reality and like collective consciousness, even about the universe itself.
Exactly. And we actually got some really interesting questions from listeners that touch on these bigger themes.
Okay, hit me with them. What are people wondering about?
So this first one comes from Sarah. She asks, if we're all creating our own realities, does that mean there's no objective truth? Like, is everything just subjective?
Ooh, that's a big one. It's something philosophers have been debating for centuries, right? Subjective versus objective reality.
Right, so how do we reconcile those two ideas?
Well, I think it's important to remember that even though our individual perceptions definitely shape our experiences, there's still a shared reality that we all exist in. There's a certain consistency.
So it's not like everyone's just living in their own little bubble with no connection to the outside world.
Right. I mean, think about it this way. We each have our own unique lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
A way of viewing the world. But that doesn't mean the world itself changes based on how we're looking at it.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like we can have our own personal realities, but there's still an underlying framework of shared experiences and, I guess, agreed upon facts.
Exactly. All right, what's the next question?
Okay, this one's from James. He asks, this whole thing sounds like magical thinking to me. Are you saying that I can win the lottery just by thinking positive thoughts?
Oh, if only it were that easy, right? But no, it's not about conjuring up specific outcomes with just willpower. It's more about cultivating a mindset that attracts positive experiences and then taking action that's aligned with those goals.
So it's not passive wishing. It's about actively creating the conditions that make those things more likely to happen.
Exactly. Like you're not magically manipulating external events. You're influencing your own behaviors, your choices, which then can influence the course of your life.
Okay, I can see that. Last question. This one comes from Maria, and she asks, if I'm surrounded by negative people all the time, how can I possibly create a positive reality for myself?
That's a tough one, for sure. It's a good reminder that our environment, the people we surround ourselves with, they have a huge impact on us. We can't control other people's negativity, but we can control how much we expose ourselves to it.
So like setting boundaries and being more intentional about who you spend time with.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing your own inner peace and seeking out positive influences.
Okay, so this whole idea of creating our reality, it's not just about our thoughts, it's about our actions, our environment, the choices we make. It's like a whole lifestyle approach.
It really is. It's about recognizing that you're not just along for the ride. You have a choice in how you respond to things.
So where does this leave us? We've explored Coccyx Man's perspective, the power of observation, the role of consciousness. We even got a little quantum physics in there. That was a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. But I think the most important takeaway is this. We have more agency than we often realize. We're not just, passive bystanders in our own lives.
We have the power to shape our experiences, even if we can't control every little thing.
It's about recognizing the power of our thoughts, our beliefs, our choices, and taking responsibility for our own reality.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But, like we always say, The exploration doesn't have to stop here.
Right. If this sparked your curiosity, there are tons of resources out there. Books, podcasts, you name it. It's a fascinating field that you can keep learning about forever.
And as always, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep creating the reality you want. Until next time, happy diving.